So my mother-in-law was recently telling me and my partner how she doesn't quite understand what a heatsink is or how it works. So I figured I would film this video to help her understand, and since she's several hundred miles away, just put it on YouTube. The question for how a heatsink works, which any of these little guys is a heatsink, comes back to surface area, which is very similar to kind of how the human brain or the primate brain looks like, why it's all convoluted, because the question is, okay, well, if you need a bunch of surface area, how do you get something with the surface area of this sheet to fit in a very small space? Wrinkle it up, which is the same concept of, like I said, the brain, or like these guys. So you add surface area by doing that. This one came off of the motherboard itself right here. This one looks like it's copper, came off of the video card, so it was right here. And then this big one, as you can see, it's got a little space for this bar to hold it on. Came off of the central processing unit, or CPU as it's better known, right here, the processor for the computer. Since we found this in the trash and decided to take it, I figured can't really hurt. Alrighty, so we've got ice cubes here that we're going to try. I fetched from the ice machine. We're going to take one on each of these and then a control just to see how fast they melt. So here goes. And because I know that the smaller one is going to tend to melt slowest, or fastest, I put the smallest one on its own as our control, just to give that much more emphasis on how fast these things work and how well they dissipate heat. You can kind of see how they sink into the tines. If you look over here, this copper-looking one, it basically fell straight on through. And so it's dissipating the heat quite well. Here's a long side shot. Here's a side shot from the CPU heatsink. Still looks like it's got a little bit. Here's the one that was just on a chip on the motherboard. So it looks like they're all doing pretty well. And in case you didn't know, a lot of times they'll use aluminum or lightweight metals that tend to be good at conducting heat anyway in these things, just to help the heat dissipate that much quicker. You can see this one from the video card is just going to town. Here's our control. You'll notice it's a little bit hollow, but nonetheless it's still pretty much a full ice cube. Whereas these other guys that were on the heat sinks have dissipated their heat. And of course that's what their purpose is in a computer, is when you have objects moving really, really fast, kind of like a radiator in a car, you need some sort of way to cool them off a lot faster than they normally would with just air going by it. So you increase the surface area and add a fan to dissipate all that heat. And you can see this greatly increases the surface area if you were to do the math and figure out length times width of all of these different pieces. This ice cube looks like it's pretty much made its way past the top. You can see this one is completely through. You can see it's not much left of it. Sorry, I don't want to shadow too much. Yeah, it's just pretty much completely gone. Just a little bit in between those tines. And our control ice cube's still pretty much a full ice cube. Here's this one from the CPU. And see, the neat thing about this is, unlike if I were to set it on the counter or something, this, like this melamine plate that I use to catch all the water when the ice melts, I don't really feel any cold temperature anywhere except for underneath right where this ice cube was melting. However, on these heat sinks, whose job is to dissipate all the temperature, even out here or out here on this corner, it all pretty much feels the same really cold temperature of ice. And same thing with these guys, just they feel down here, they feel up top in the corner where the ice wasn't even, and it's all pretty much really cold because it's trying to conduct that heat as well as it can elsewhere. I mean, we saw that we put the ice cube in the middle here, and it's made its way pretty much down there. Let's see. Yep, even these corners where it really wasn't even touching are still just as cold as an ice cube. Yeah, there's really not much left of this one from the central processing unit. And obviously that's going to be one of the hottest places of your computer because it's doing however many thousand cycles per second trying to process the data and inputs you're putting into your computer. Well, it looks like the ice cube is pretty much almost fallen out of this one that was just sitting on the motherboard. It's pretty melted. This one, there's nothing but water in that. You can see it just kind of pour out of there. That's been long melted. And here's our control ice cube, still holding its ice cube shape. We may as well, at this point, since we've seen how well these guys can melt the ice and see how there's just that little bit left in there, may as well just kind of pop this guy on here and watch it go as well. Don't want it to fall off. Look at that. It just goes right on through. You see that? Just watching it go straight on down. And it's in between those times right now. Didn't take hardly any time at all. Here's the CPU, or CPU heatsink. Don't know why it's got this one little guy on top. Kind of interesting. A little rogue piece. And yeah, it looks like the only piece remaining on this one from the motherboard was hanging off to the side. So there you have it. That's these are your heat sinks, and that's how they cool these really hot parts of your computer, your processor and some microchips and your video card. Hopefully you guys learned something. If not, then take apart a computer sometime or build a computer. That's how I started learning.